Hello, welcome to a new episode of Rants with Danny Shi. Today is February 16th, and we are talking about the World Baseball Classic qualifier roster for Team Taiwan. This is actually take two of my solo part. I'm going to have Jeff Duda, an international baseball guru on Twitter, to come on the show and talk about the rosters of Nicaragua, South Africa, and Spain. I actually did like a little just solo part just to talk about my thoughts on the Team Taiwan roster, how the World Baseball Classic qualifier, how we historically have been doing in this tournament, not just the qualifier, but this tournament overall, and my worries of this team next week. But I wasn't really happy about it, so I'm going to do it again, and hopefully this one is better. I just want to start by saying this is the perfect opportunity for Taiwan to screw up. It's a qualifier, so we're not even in the actual tournament just yet, and the overall sentiment on the national baseball team, has never been higher within Taiwan. But that being said, there are a lot of casual baseball fans out there that's going to expect a lot from this team, which justifiably so. The expectations for this team should be at a different level versus the Premier 12 team pre-tournament. However, that is where disappointment starts, because if you don't have expectations, you don't have disappointment for this particular tournament or this particular qualifier. There's a lot of expectations. I feel like if, let's say in game one, Taiwan is down 2-0 in the sixth inning, that pressure will start kicking in, not just from the outside, but internally. Because for one, because of the expectations, and two, because of this structure, this schedule. How this qualifier is going to work is games are going to start on February 21st, the Friday, next Friday at 7 p.m. local time, which is about 6 a.m. Eastern. That's Taiwan's first game versus Spain. And then the following day, Taiwan faces South Africa. Next day, you place Nicaragua. After the Taiwan's last game, everybody would play each other in the group. So Taiwan is in a group with Spain, South Africa, and Nicaragua. And the team with the best record after the round robin gets an automatic bid to the actual tournament. The second and third place teams among the standings will play in like a final game 7. It's actually game 7 because it's the seventh game of the qualifier, for like a 1-game playoff that determines who gets to be in the final tournament in 2026. It's a lot of pressure because, for one, this is a more minor note, the marketing agency that is hosting this tournament, the way they price their tickets, they're expecting Taiwan to qualify with the number one overall seed, basically, of this qualifier, go all the way into the actual tournament in 2026. The ticket price for Game 7 is a fraction of all of the other games involving Taiwan, so they're expecting Taiwan to not be in that playoff. Two, it's also a Tuesday. Game 7 is happening on Tuesday. All the other games, all of the other Taiwan games are happening on weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But again, you're talking about you basically, in order to guarantee yourself to be in first place, you have to beat everybody. You have to win. You have to win your Friday game, Saturday game, Sunday game, back to back. The one advantage for Taiwan is Taiwan is not going to have the night game following, a day game following a night game. So all of the games are 24 hours from each other, all the start times. So for example, Spain kind of is getting screwed by the schedule. They have a evening game in day 1 and then a noon game in day 2. So let's say the game finishes at 10 o'clock. They get back to the hotel at 12 midnight, or maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning. They have a game in like 11 hours. And so that's going to be a challenge for Spain. It's going to be a challenge for South Africa, but Taiwan is the host, and so Taiwan has this little advantage. That being said, again, it's the World Baseball Classic. Not only are the nationality rules much more relaxed. There are pitch limit rules that that would affect this particular qualifier. According to Fernando Rayo, a correspondent that covers Nicaraguan baseball, did a terrific job in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. He has reported that the qualifier will have the same pitching limit as the 2023 tournament. So pitchers who threw more than 50 pitches, they will get a 4 days. They will have to have a mandated 4 days rest. More than 30 pitches, so between 30 and 49 pitches, you have mandated 1 day rest. And if you throw more than 65 pitches, you can't throw more than 65 pitches in a game. If you do the math on the days between the first game and the last game, so between game 1 and game 7, that's 4 days. I'm assuming the so-called 4 days rest is starts the day after the game. So if I pitch on Friday, then Saturday will be game 1, Sunday game 2, Sunday day 2, Monday day 3, Tuesday day 4, and then I'm allowed to throw. Which means that if I throw more than 50 pitches in one single game, I'm done for this qualifier. So your depth is in question. Your pitching depth is a huge part of your of how good you're going to perform in this particular qualifier. And I look at Taiwan's roster. Taiwan has 15 pitchers on this roster. I don't know what to think of the minor league pitchers, because I have no idea what kind of pitch limit their team has put on these pitchers at this stage in spring training. Again, we're in February. Pitchers and catchers just reported to camp like a week ago. How strict are the teams going to be on their pitchers? And I think it might be very, very, very strict, because it's a qualifier, and even in the regular World Baseball Classic tournament in 2023, like the actual tournament, Team USA had to struggle with all these pitch limits that the MLB teams have been put upon their pitchers, let alone a Taiwanese team that MLB teams will have less of a connection with. And in a qualifier, nonetheless, Taiwan has 3 pitchers from the athletic system, 1 player from the pirate system, 1 from the Nippon Ham in Japan, and 1 from the Yakult Swallows, also in Japan. So you have 5 overseas pitchers, which I have no idea how much they're allowed to throw. And so if their pitch limit is even more strict than the World Baseball Classic pitching limit, which it could be, because again, we're at a very early stage in spring training. Normally the World Baseball Classic is in mid to late March. We're in late February. Okay, I just don't know what to expect from this pitching staff. The coaching staff for Taiwan was touted with being very quick with their pitching change in the Premier 12, but there are no pitch limits in the Premier 12, and there are no mandated days of rest in the Premier 12. So they can go out there and do however they want. That's not the case with this World Baseball Classic, especially considering if you throw more than 50 pitches, you're done for this qualifier. If you throw more than 30 pitches, you have to take a 1 day break. And then on top of that, whatever pitch limit each team has put upon each pitcher. And I'm not just saying only overseas teams put the limit on it. CBBL teams also put pitch limits on their pitchers. We heard news of the Premier 12, for example, where Zhang Choyaku, for example, he was given a 30 pitch limit in the Premier 12. He's a pitcher from the Fubon Guardians. And so I just don't know, because you have 3 games for 3 straight days. You would potentially have these mandated days, resting days put in there. It's not just one of those things where we had to tough it out. That's just not how this particular structure works. And so I'm sure it's the same problems that the other teams are facing. In fact, I heard that other teams have had, especially teams relying upon minor league or Major League Baseball players, have had a tough time recruiting players because it's a qualifier and it's all the way in Taiwan. And so I'm assuming the other teams are facing the same problems, but that, stuff like this, rules like that, it pulls traditional baseball powerhouses and non-traditional powerhouses closer to each other, because you're now really testing depth. And for a team like Taiwan, which basically had to do a split squad between the Premier 12 and the World Baseball Classic, the depth of your pitching nationally has been put to a very big test. And I look at this Taiwanese roster, this pitching staff. There's only one actual starter that I would say it's a definite starter, which is number 69, Shiroshi. And I'm assuming that he's going to start in game 1. He's going to throw more than 50 pitches. He's going to be done for this qualifier. He's going to test the international market, we're all assuming, at the end of 2025, and this is a perfect time to showcase his talent. And the Dragons have been very open to him pitching in this particular tournament, but they're also been very wary on protecting him, not throwing too many innings. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries in the last 4 to 5 years, so he's going to be a starter. But other than that, I can't look at a minor league pitcher like Athletics pitcher or Pirates pitcher and say, oh, they're going to be a starter and they're going to let him throw 50 pitches. I don't know what kind of pitch limit they're on, and that's just me from the outside. That's what worries me. Obviously, the teams know how they're supposed to use their players and stuff like that, and that's, I'm pretty sure, the basis of them selecting players for this roster. But my worry is, what happens if all of a sudden you spend more than a couple of pitches on a particular hitter, or you have traffic on the base paths? There's very little wiggle room in terms of 3 straight days, and then you have a potential game 7 at the end of the qualifier if you don't finish first. The gap between the benefits of finishing first and second place is so immense that I think it's going to be, for Taiwan, it is so important to beat Spain. It's so important to just win out, just to have the ability to not worry about game 7. That is going to be huge. And if you're Nicaragua, for example, right, you're 1-1 going into the final game with Taiwan. Let's say South Africa is 0-3 at that point, because South Africa would have played 3 games, all 3 games. Spain would have played all 3 games. You're Nicaragua. You're 1-1. Taiwan is 2-0, and if you lose, you have to play game 7. If you don't, if you win, then you go in this tiebreaker with Taiwan, or in which case they would, if they do head-to-head. I don't know. In which case, if they do head-to-head, maybe they would be. There are a lot of different situations where you really have to start playing the qualification game, because who gets to qualify, how many runs they have to win, because it hinders on how you're using your pitchers. If Nicaragua basically has to win by 9 runs in the final game against Taiwan in order to finish first place, are they going to go all out and try to win by 9 runs? Or are they going to save their pitchers for game 7? It's all of this stuff is very important for this particular qualifier. It's going to be a huge chess match. And I think it's a huge worry for me, because you look at this Taiwanese roster, 15 pitchers, and let's say you play 3 games, you have to throw 27 pitches, 27 innings. So if you divide it out evenly, each person gets a little less than 2 innings. But if you extend it to 36 innings, because you have to play 4 games, you have to play game 7, then you divide that among 15. Each player has to get almost 3 innings on average. But then you have this pitch limit, right, that comes in. And so if you have traffic on the base paths, if you took too many pitches to get out, that changes all that entire formula. And if you throw more than 50 pitches, you're done. If you throw more than 30 pitches, you're done the following day. I think that 1 day break between the Sunday games and the Tuesday game is huge. Maybe that will allow that will stop teams from saving their pitchers for game 7. However, again, is for Taiwan, the for any team, but especially for Taiwan, when you're the favorites to going into this tournament, the margin for error is actually very small. That's my concern. The margin of error is very small, and Spain and Nicaragua, they're not easy teams to play. With this nationality rules, Spain has a lot of help from the minor league system, Nicaragua as well. Nicaragua actually was in the actual tournament and scared a couple teams, I think, in the 2023 tournament. The margin of error is very small, and it's a one-game playoff, basically every single game. And we've seen in the Premier 12, if the margin of error starts getting smaller, a couple of lucky swings, then all of a sudden Taiwan is the world champion. Which, it's I think we can all sit here and be honest with ourselves how Taiwan, the CPBL especially, is not the best professional baseball league in the world, but we won a championship. Why? Because the margin of error is small, and then the margin of randomness for in these short-term tournaments are very, very impactful. And so there's nothing to be relaxed about if you're Taiwan, if you're a Taiwanese fan. And then you look at the fielder side of this roster, everybody's from the CPBL. I get that. Now my worry would be the gap between the veterans and the youngsters on this team. I think in terms of chemistry, that's okay. But then you look at who are you going to rely on, right? Yu Chang, he played the majority of the second half of the 2024 season with a bad wrist. That is a huge. I mean, playing through the wrist is such a. I remember hearing Mark Teixeira, his probably his biggest regret playing in his professional career is not to get his wrist fixed. But for some reason, the Guardians made Yu Chang play through a bad wrist. How good is he right now? He's had an off season of rest, but then again, he's starting his workout. He's basically preparing himself to start playing real baseball in February. How does that impact his recovery from this wrist injury? Wu Nianting, the former Cebu Lions infielder, did a pretty good job against Lotte Giants. By the way, thank you, Lotte, for coming in and playing a couple of games with Taiwan. Those games I thought was quite entertaining. They're a month out from the regular season, and they're basically treating these games as serious as they could, not without jeopardizing their own spring training schedule and everything. They sent some of their best players to play against Taiwan. So really, I thought the Lotte Giants was tremendous in helping Taiwan prepare for this qualifier. But Wu Nianting had a very good game too. But again, he's recovering from a pretty major injury that he was sidelined for a good part of the second half in the 2024 season. Lin Ziwei has never been the same. Basically, was never performed as the major league caliber player in the CPBL. Not only offensively, but defensively, he's been a disappointment in the outfield. He's done okay as a second baseman, but we've seen him make some mental lapses playing defense in the two Lotte Giants games. So how much can we expect from him? And then outside of those three, Li Zongxin has never had senior international baseball experience. Zheng Ziyou, very young player. Wang Boxian, very young player. So you're basically the gap between your I would imagine your starters and your backup is pretty big on the infield side. On the outfield, Chen Jiexian has played in the Premier 12, and so he's had a tremendously short off season. He played up till the end of November. That's like the week before Thanksgiving. He was still playing in the World Championship, and he was the hero. But then a 2-month turnaround, and all of a sudden he has to prepare for the qualifier. How good is he going to be? How good has his recovery been? And then Song Chenrui, Lin Jiawei, Chen Wenjie, they're all first time. If I'm wrong, I don't know if I'm wrong, but they're all first time senior international tournament players. If things start to get loose, if Taiwan is trailing 2-0 against Spain in game 1, how are they going to react? Chen Wenjie got hit in the knees in the Lotte Giants practice games, clearly enough to play in the qualifier. We'll see how good he is. Song Chenrui, I thought I'll say it this way: the coaching staff has more confidence in Song Chen-Rui as at this point in his career than I am. And Lin Jiawei had a huge Grand Slam, but again, in Game 2 in the Lotte Giants games. But again, he's a young player. So overall, a lot of youth and some senior leadership. But when I look at this roster on the offense, I don't know who I can rely on. I understand on the talent-wise on the top end, Yu Chang obviously is up there, major league level player, hitter, quad A at the very minimum, right? Onyedin has had some pretty good offensive periods in the Japanese baseball league, and Linzu, in the Nippon baseball league, and Linzu obviously is a major league baseball level player. But how are they going to match up with some of the very new and, to me personally, very unknown pitchers from Spain and Nicaragua in South Africa? That's going to be interesting, and that's my worry. I mean, look at this roster. Liu Jihong is out, justifiably, but he's out. Chen Zihao is out. A lot of the players, he's back. He's with the Pirates, and Lin Jiajun, he's with the Athletics. Nothing with ill thoughts, or I have nothing bad to say about them not participating in this tournament, especially for Zheng Zongzhe and Lin Jiajun, who both got Major League Spring Training invites. But a lot of the players that you could rely on, they're all out, and so I don't know. It feels I don't think it's as easy as a cakewalk as people think this qualifier is. And with that being said, that's my thoughts on the Team Taiwan roster. And let's have Jeff Duda join us and break down the rosters of the other teams in this qualifier group. And welcoming into the virtual studio is the International Baseball Guru on Twitter. He's been covering the World Baseball Classic qualifier and has been sharing a lot of information, not just the World Baseball Classic, but one of the more renowned English tweeting accounts with the Premier 12 as well. During the championship, I was following your stuff, seeing how people outside of Taiwan was reacting to the championship and everything. And obviously, you did a terrific job explaining how important that was for Taiwan. But welcoming in is Jeff Duda. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well today. How about yourself?
Good, very good. It is again February 16th. And this will be a kind of like a part 2 to this episode. I've done like a 25 to 30 minute solo rant on this roster, and a little bit of an outlook on how Taiwan should be. I'm worried about Taiwan in this qualifier, not going to lie. But for this particular interview, we're going to jump into the rosters of the other 3 teams. Again, those are Nicaragua, South Africa, and Spain. Taiwan will play Spain first, then South Africa and Nicaragua. So I said that backwards. And then a potential Game 7 for this qualifier. But before we jump into the other, I call it the other teams because obviously I cover Taiwan the most. But before we jump into the rosters of the other teams, can you tell us what do you think about Taiwan in this qualifier? How do you think we stack up against the rest of the teams?
I feel like Taiwan offensively, it's not great because don't have I know Lyle Lin, he opted out, right?
Yep, he's out.
Yeah, he opted out. And then I think Yu Chang is going to have to carry a pretty significant load offensively. They're going to need him to kind of recreate some of the WBC magic. So, I mean, offensively, it's not great, but I just look at the pitching. It's far and away the best in the group. Best just pure stuff, too. Guys that can throw in the mid, upper 90s. Outside of a couple guys on Nicaragua, no one else does. Spain, low velocity across the board. They're going to be 89 to 91 max for the most part. So it's just Taiwan has so much more depth in the pitching staff. They throw so much harder. They're the more high-end stuff. So I think other teams in the pool are going to have a really hard time scoring off them. So I don't think Taiwan necessarily has to score a lot. They just have to do just enough. Just get a couple guys who can get going, and they should be able to be fine. I think having 4 guys in the rotation who can go in and probably shut down other offenses in the group, that's just not something anyone else in the group has. So it's going to be hard to really match them. And then you're playing at home too. And, I know Taiwanese fans are pretty crazy. So like I
Yeah.
remember the WBC, like the players may not admit to it, but I know they were spooked
Yeah.
because there were some
Mike Piazza kind of said it without saying it too
yeah, there was
in the
I,
post game.
I remember watching the Netherlands game when Yu Chang hit the grand slam. You could see the pitchers, they were breathing heavy. They were kind of walking around the mound. They were just like, okay, this is crazy. We never pitched in an environment like this. And I think it's like one of the rare instances where like there's an actual home field advantage in baseball, where the fans are really like impacting what's happening on the field. So I think that's a big difference maker for them. And it's why like I don't have a ton of concern with Taiwan missing. It's just when you have the best pitching, you got a great home field environment, and you know you have a few guys in the lineup who can do some damage. So, I mean, I like this Taiwan roster. I know not having like Hao Yu Lee hurts because he's gonna be one of the best hitters at the WBC if they qualify. So that hurts,
Yeah.
but they have enough offense, I think.
Yeah, and when you're talking about pitching taking over for Taiwan, that is historically how Taiwan has played in these elite and international tournaments. It's you have it going back all the way to the 70s and 80s. It's you have a couple of really strong starting pitchers that just kind of dominate the game. You probably squeeze out a couple of runs here and there, and then you win 2-0. Not saying that that's going to happen in this tournament because you have a pitch limit of 65, and then after 50 pitches, you're done for the entire qualifier. You have a 4 days. If that's the pitching limit, right? You have to do a 4 days
If you
rest after 50.
yeah, after 50, you're done. You would need at least
Yeah.
another day or two in the tournament to have a chance. So yeah,
Yeah.
once they hit 50,
So
you're done.
yeah. So I mean, in the qualifier, between the first game and the last game is like 4 days or something like that. So you're not like if you're over 50, you're done. And so it really comes down to pitching depth, right? And you said, like I said, I think this overall stuff maybe Taiwan is up there, but in terms of pitching depth, let's say if Taiwan's pitching depth is at 100, right? Like in terms of on a random scale, Taiwan's at 100. How would you say like Nicaragua, South Africa, and Spain compare on the pitching
Africa,
depth side?
like a 40. Like it's like they're 40 or 30 just because they have the softest tossers in the entire qualifier. And for them, once you get beyond Dylan Unsworth, there's just not a lot there. Like like that first game for them against Nicaragua, he has to go probably 5 innings at least and max
That is
out.
tough on a 65 pitch limit.
Yeah, yeah.
That is very
Luckily
tough.
for him, he's not a strikeout pitcher really. He's a very much put the ball in play. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, so he's very much he can get those early outs to give them a chance, and he's facing a Nicaragua offense that isn't great. So I think he can do that, but that's their big chance for a win. And they need him to cover them because once you get into their bullpen, it's a lot of guys who are throwing like 83, 84, 85, and it's basically a hope and a prayer. So I think and then I would say Nicaragua probably like an 80, 85. They have some weaknesses with depth, but they have 3 guys who can give you innings out of the rotation, and they got a couple hard throwers in the bullpen. Like Angel Abondo and Carlos Tejer, who are guys who have, experience pitching at high levels, and they can get out, but they have some vulnerabilities in areas that I don't think Taiwan has. And then Spain, it's mostly, they have a couple guys at the top of the rotation, and then the bullpen, like a Reiner Cruz, can give them innings, but they don't really have the guys who can kind of bridge in the middle relief to get to the closer. And that's kind of, like even if they can like limit Taiwan's offense, they're going to get to that bullpen, and that's kind of the one area where I think is pitching depth is where Taiwan is far superior to the teams. And when you have such a pitch limit, if you have that pitching depth, it's so hard to beat you because if you don't have the pitching depth, you're going to get exposed in a tournament where your starter can't go more than 5 innings, really.
Exactly, and to me, it's when I look at this Taiwanese roster, my biggest worry on the pitching side is I don't know what to expect from the pitch limit set by the teams on these minor league pitchers. But to be fair, that is something that every team has to juggle with, right? Like Nicaragua, I think I saw them struggling to recruit players even to participate because they had to travel across the Pacific and then play and then have to go back. So to be fair, that is something that every team has to deal with. But look, when I look at this Taiwanese team, the only starter that I think would have the green light to go 50 pitches and above is number 69, Shiroshi, the Dragons pitcher, who's had arguably the best stuff with in the domestic with among the domestic players left in the CPBL in this upcoming season. And so to me, again, that is my biggest worry on the pitching side. And on like offensively, you addressed it perfectly. We agree that Yu Chang is probably the guy with the biggest pop. At the same time, he played with a bad wrist in the majority of the 2024 season, and you have a shorter off season to recover. How good is he going to be? We'll see. Chen Jiexin is another guy you probably want to see big, slugging stuff out of, but then he's had even a shorter off season because he played in the Premier 12. So his season ended at the end of November, and then he's got to turn it around and play in February. So that is just my concern on the Taiwanese team. There's like a little bit of a brief overview of my little 30-minute rant as I always go on.
One thing I will say is I don't have as much a concern with the athletics pitchers because generally the athletics are very supportive of players playing internationally, and they give a lot more freedom and less restrictions than a lot of these other teams. Like, I think about it, like Taiwan got lucky in that their pitchers are signed to organizations who are very supportive of them playing in these. Well, like Nicaragua, they play for organizations that are not. And they got, I want to say every single minor league pitcher that they have, I don't think was approved to play. So it was only a couple position players that got approved. So that's a significant blow to them. Like, but if they were on the Athletics or the Pirates, they're probably playing in this tournament. So it really is. The Taiwan got a little fortunate, but it's. But I think for them, you just look at the pitching because I think they have quite a bit of bullpen arms that they can go to, and
it's a lot.
Think, yeah, like it's funny because I think I would say this roster, even though they're missing, like pitching wise, more talented than the Premier 12 roster that they had. Like I think the rotation in particular has a lot more like high end arms, and a lot of guys who have high end stuff. And so it's actually kind of incredible. They won the Premier 12, and now they're going to send more better pitching. And I just look, if they can qualify, that World Baseball Classic roster is going to be, I think, got to be the best roster in the country's history. Because it's if you get Hao Yu Lee, back, because I know he had like an injury at the end of the season, so I don't know if that's
the Pirates prospect as well.
Yeah, he opted out. He got spring training.
Yeah, he opted out, but I'm assuming he's going to play in the 26 if he's healthy. So I think Pirates will be fine with him participating. And I also said that, for a baseball country like Taiwan, your depth, especially pitching wise, has never been tested like this offseason when you have a Premier 12 and qualifier back to back. There are no other countries that have to deal with this because Taiwan finished last in the World Baseball Classic in the group. So that's why, normally when you're a powerhouse, you don't have to play in the qualifier, so I think if Taiwan goes through these two tournaments unscathed, and in fact, like you said, Taiwan's pitching staff shows even better performance in the qualifier, that says a lot about the overall pitching depth in Taiwanese baseball overall. Because like you said, there's only one guy that was playing overseas in the Premier 12 roster, Liu, and the opener and the final starter. Everybody else were CPBL pitchers, and there are a couple of closers, but in this particular roster, there are 4 closers in the CPBL teams that, on top of all the overseas pitchers who generally have better stuff or generally has better talent versus the CPBL bullpen pitchers. So, I agree with you that on the top end side, this particular pitching staff probably has more to look for or to be excited about. but that does not in any way, shape, or form diminish what the pitching staff has accomplished in the Premier 12, because that was just amazing.
Yeah, I think the general opinion from what I've viewed is like most people in Taiwan didn't think they were going to do all that well. Like it
Nope.
was very
We would have been. I was so happy after we beat Korea. I thought it was like, oh, that's fine. Like we could go 1-4, but we beat Korea. Like it's just like that rivalry thing, right, between Taiwan and Korea. Like 6-3, we kind of got lucky in that game because there's a 6-run inning and then kind of lost the rest of the game. But look, like I was happy, and then they marched down to Tokyo, and we also got really lucky there with the super round, winning just one game. It still got to the finals, and but look, like the pitching staff overall just did a tremendous job. I want to veer right back to the teams in the qualifier though. I'm going to go through each team. I'm going to ask you players to watch out for, especially for those who are only looking, basically somebody like myself who basically focuses on a CPPL and some Major League Baseball, but not a ton of minor league baseball. Which players to watch out for on each team, and then one very arbitrary question, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how much should Taiwan be worried about each team? But I'm going to go on the rundown. I wrote Spain, Nicaragua, and South Africa, but I would rather go based on the schedule that Taiwan's going to play, which we're going to start with Spain, then South Africa, and Nicaragua. So starting with Spain, who are the players to watch out for, and how worried should Taiwan be?
all right. For Spain, I would say they had some opt-outs. So the probably Felix Stevens offensively is going to probably be like the main source of power. Like I remember last year he hit, or 2023, I think he hit like a ball like almost 500 feet in the minors. So he's going to be their big source of power. And then Carlos Colmenares is probably going to be their starting shortstop. He had a pretty good season in the Australian Baseball League. I think he hit 6 home runs, struggled in single A in 2024, but I think he's showing some progress. He's going to be a guy that they really count on. And then I look at, I mean, offensively, they don't really have a whole lot of depth. Like Jesus Estaras has had a big few tournaments in the European Championships and in the Harlem Baseball Week. So I mean, he's a guy to look at. But I think they don't have great depth. I would say another guy is probably Andres Angelo, who's from Colombia. He's on this team. He's had quite a bit of success playing in Venezuela and playing in the Colombian Winter League. So he's a guy to look for. But I think they don't have, I think once you get beyond about the top 3 or 4 hitters, there's a clear drop off in players. And like, I think if Taiwan can handle those guys, I think they'll have some issues scoring offensively. So it's kind of the same thing with Nicaragua too. And then pitching, I would say Elian Leyva should be the starter against Taiwan. He's their number 1, and they're going to need him to go as deep as he possibly can in that game. He's probably their biggest chance at winning. And then Pablo Guillen should be their number 2. He would, I'm guessing if they lose to Taiwan, they might try and save him for later in the tournament, because once they get beyond him, then it can become a pretty big issue for them because they don't have that depth that Taiwan does. So I think
Spain has a very tough schedule because they have an evening game in day 1, and then less than 12 hours later they have to play Nicaragua, which are for if you're Spain, those are your top 2 opponents.
Yeah.
Lucky for them though, kind of a good news for them is they could theoretically win 1 game out of the 3 and still make the playoff, like the game 7. So
for them, I would say if you lose to Taiwan, I would definitely start planning for the qualifier final, just because if you use up your next best pitcher against Nicaragua and you don't have him for the final game, then it's like, oh, well, we mismanaged this. Because, I mean, you have to think you can beat South Africa, just considering the talent mismatch there. Sure. So, I mean, they could basically just almost throw in the towel in game 2 and not make a difference. But I will say the first game of the tournament, it could throw a bit of chaos into the tournament, because I think South Africa has a shot in that game. So if they win that game, then it's like, who knows what's going to happen from there. I would say Spain is just, it's kind of similar to the last tournament, is that they have a few guys, the last qualifier, I should say. they have a few guys who can mash, and then once you get beyond that, there can be some issues. And then in the pitching staff, it's limited depth. And like against Czechia in the last qualifier, the depth got tested, and offensively they kind of were shut down. So it's kind of one of those things where they have the potential to put a scare. Like I think they can play close with Taiwan in game one, but I think Elian Leva can give them some good innings. But do they have enough in the bullpen after he leaves to hold Taiwan? It's gonna be close, probably like a 4-2 game probably, but I would say that game may be Taiwan's biggest scare just because of all the factors. It's your first game in the tournament, it's largely they're facing a lot of guys they've never seen before.
Yes.
So it's definitely they could put a scare, but I would be very surprised if they beat Taiwan in that game, just because I just think Taiwan just has the overwhelming pitching advantage. So, but I mean, yeah, I think that's probably the one game I'd be most nervous about.
Sure. Yeah, and I think among like Taiwanese baseball YouTubers and analysis videos, Spain is like the one team that they thought that not that they're a clear cut number two, but they would be the one team that Taiwan should be most worried about out of the three. But for Spain, I was wondering because if somebody has represented Spain in the qualifier. Yeah. In 26, could they represent somebody else?
Yes.
Or for this tournament, so they could be playing for like Venezuela, for example.
Yeah, there's no restrictions. It's not like WBSC where you have to go and get like a transfer. It's in WBC you can play. If you play for one country in the qualifier, you can play for a different one as long as you're eligible for citizenship for that country.
That's interesting. Okay.
Like Ronald Medrano, who's starting for Nicaragua, he played for Spain the last qualifier, and then played for Nicaragua in the World Baseball Classic, and then he's playing for Nicaragua again here.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So
and like Elian Leva played for Cuba, he's playing for Spain.
Yeah. For me, the nationality rules are so like Taiwan, kind of countries like Taiwan and Korea get screwed over. I don't know if Koreans want to say that they get screwed over, but I feel like Taiwan gets screwed over by a lot, and that's I understand the reasoning behind it. It makes the product more entertaining with more teams being able to compete, and just make the games more entertaining.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and very interestingly, I forgot to mention this in my solo part, but like theoretically, every Taiwanese player can play for China because theoretically everybody from Taiwan is eligible to get. So we could
might be excommunicated from the country if they left and watched to be played. Yeah.
Right, but like if there's a steel struck, and hey, we're gonna send two Taiwanese teams. One is gonna be called China. That would be fun. But yeah, in theory, Taiwanese players can also represent China, and vice versa. Chinese players theoretically can represent Taiwan because in theory they're eligible for Taiwanese citizenship. So
it's like the Caribbean players that play for the Netherlands, even if they never play the Netherlands.
Yeah, for sure. So Spain, you think are and I think for Spain again, Spain's their schedule is very tough. They have an evening game following morning game following an evening game, but I would assume they're going all out for game one. If you beat Taiwan, you're almost guaranteed at least in game 7 qualifier final. But then you also have a shot at not playing in that game at all. And then if you're Taiwan, again, if you're down, Taiwan could be down 2-0 the sixth inning, and all of a sudden all the pressure of the world is on you because you have 40,000 people in the arena. That's that is wondering what is happening. The expectations for Taiwan for this qualifier, Taiwan could win all 3 games 2-1, and that would be disappointment. That's how much pressure and how high the expectation is.
12 is it's a great feeling for Taiwanese people, but it also changes the expectations to where it's we're one of the best teams in the world now, so we have to dominate in these games, and if we don't, well then what are we doing? It's
exactly.
I would say, I think for me, it's like you went months without playing. So you don't know how the guys are going to be early because it's spring training, So it's not like they're not in top form. So, some of the hitters it may take a little bit in the tournament to get themselves going. Some of the pitchers, may not be as sharp as they want to be. So I would just, say it's like you got to be patient and let the tournament happen. And I would say if Taiwan loses to Spain, I'd still think they're the favorite. They're favorites to come out just because they can go to that fourth game if they have to.
Yes.
They have that
Exactly.
15, they have that depth that that's why I think the first day of the tournament is massive because Spain and Nicaragua, they need to win those games. Like those, they don't have that depth. They have to win those games. And if they don't win those games, then day two, it's like, okay, do we use our ace or do we use our number two here? Because if we do, they're not going to be there for the final game if we get there. And if we don't win, we don't finish first, then we're counting on maybe our fourth guy, maybe a long relief guy in the bullpen who, is not one of our top guys. So it puts a lot of strain on teams. So I think day one, Nicaragua and Spain, they're going all out. It's Nicaragua less so just because they're not going to throw Ronald Madrano. I'd be shocked if he went.
Right.
Well, I think they have to win those games because if they don't, it's chaos in the pool and they're in trouble.
Yeah. Moving on to South Africa, I think my understanding is out of the four, it's harder to pick who number two is versus who number four is, because if you look at the South African roster, like you said earlier, Dylan Earnsworth, who pitched in the CPBL in 2021 for the Fubon Guardians, in my understanding is he's the only non-South African baseball league player on this roster. So for casual Taiwanese fans, there's a lot of unknown on how good the South African league is.
Christian Byers, he plays in Baseball United and plays in Germany. And he plays at home in South Africa in their league, in the off season. But he's the other guy who is they have a couple guys who could have been on this roster that are playing college baseball in the US, but it's almost entirely they're playing in their South African baseball leagues. It's kind of a weird setup how they do it. They do a lot of it by province and not necessarily pure league.
I wonder, I wonder how the conversation went in college baseball. It's you go to a head coach at a school and go by the way, can you let me go to Taiwan for 2 weeks in the first week of the actual season, and it's because I want to play for South Africa. But what do you think of this team, and how worried should Taiwan be?
Not at all, honestly. I'm gonna just be honest. I don't think you should be worried at all, just because they're not going to get Dylan Unsworth, and I think they didn't get their two next best pitchers in his tournament, and so they're one of their starters. Let me pull up the roster. He started in the under-23 World Cup. I think it was against South Korea. Well, let me find the wrong. He started. It was Josh Tribe. Yeah, I think he could end up being a guy who starts against Taiwan. He had a pretty decent tournament, but he only throws 84, 85. And once you get beyond Dylan Unsworth, it's just the stuff drops pretty significantly. And offensively, they're relying on a lot of guys who are more singles type hitters. They don't have a lot of power. So even if you make mistakes, they're not really going to punish you, hit the ball, in the seats. They have to string together 3, 4, 5 hits in a row to kind of have a big inning. And I just look at in this type of environment, when you're facing high-end pitching from Taiwan, you need guys who can hit it out. You're not going to be able to string together long rallies. Yeah. It's just too difficult. And they are a team that they don't have a lot of speed too. They have a couple speed guys, but they're mostly station to station guys. So you have station to station guys, no power. It's a recipe for offensive struggles. And so I would not be too worried if I was Taiwan about South Africa. I think it's just they're going to be a little overmatched. Last qualifier, they almost beat Spain 5-4, and they had a time run in the 9th. I was really surprising, but they haven't really added many actual guys to that roster, and a lot of those guys were older, so they have a lot of guys in their mid to late 30s, and kind of guys who are just kind of hanging on, still playing baseball, but they don't have a lot of youth. They have about 4 or 5 guys they added to this team, but none of them are playing high-level baseball outside of South Africa. So it's going to be a big challenge for them to just, once you get beyond day one, it'll be a really challenge for them to stay competitive.
Yeah, and again, but like for me, they're playing with house money, right? Like there's nothing much expecting out of them, and like if they can squeeze out a win against Nicaragua, then you're talking about a pretty good, decent shot at Game 7, and then if you do play in Game 7, you're 9 innings away from winning, and from we all know
one against Nicaragua, I feel like the Taiwanese fans are going to get behind South Africa if that game's close.
Just chaos, right? Yeah.
Please give us South Africa. So I think it can be one of those things where it's close. Nicaragua's feeling a little pressure, and then the crowd is getting behind South Africa, cheering everything they do, and then you're Nicaragua, you start gripping the bat a little tighter, you start feeling that pressure on the mound, and I feel like that's South Africa's best chance. But they do win that game, then it's like, okay, we might be having another group that Taiwan's a part of that has a major tie at the end of the pool play. I could honestly see 3 teams that want to do, and then I don't really know the tiebreaker rule on that. Like, I don't know how they're gonna do it. Like, because they don't do tiebreaker games anymore. I don't think like they used to.
Yes, I don't know if my best guess, if there are 3 teams that's 1 and 2, that means obviously one team is 3-0, and then so the 1 games will be with each other, right? Among the 3, so then it's TQL or the same stuff that screwed Taiwan over in the 23 tournament. So
I feel like you probably shouldn't even mention that phrase in Taiwan no more. Like it's just like
dude. And it's funny because like in the Premier 12, after the tournament, people are saying, oh, like Korea kind of got the usual Taiwanese script, which is you lose your first game against the rival, and then you lose your second game against Japan, which is like obviously that becomes a do or die game, and you obviously lose to Japan, and you're like, oh my god, now you have to go back and calculate your TQR and see who has to beat whom, and then who by how much in order for you to have a chance, and that's normally our script, and so hopefully we don't have to do that for this qualifier. And then we move on for the last day. So each of Taiwan's games are in the evening. So the last game we play Nicaragua, which pitching depth becomes a huge part of this. Taiwan may have may have enough to deal with it, especially considering we do play South Africa in Game 2. So you probably can save some of your arms for the third game. But then I just don't know, like, if based on what you said, I just don't know if the other side has the same, especially they would have played South Africa and then Spain in Game 2. And so both of them are almost must wins for them.
Yeah, I think when you look at what I expect is for Game 1, I do not expect Nicaragua to start Ronald Medrano. I don't expect him to go in Game 2. I think they want to win, because if you win against Spain, then it's all great. If you lose, well, whatever. You still have a chance to play in the final. I think they're saving Ronald Medrano. If they win against Spain, I think he's starting against Taiwan, and he's their ace. He's their unquestioned guy that they're counting on. So he's starting against Taiwan if they beat Spain, or if they lose to Spain, they'll save him for the final against Spain or Taiwan, whatever it is. So I think it's really very strategic in this tournament. I think Nicaragua, though, they have the most depth behind Taiwan pitching. So they are probably the team who can withstand a final game the most. I think it's very, like, this Nicaragua roster reminds me so much of their last qualifier roster. Offensively, it's like, they're trying to get enough, but they have a lot of arms they can go to. And once they get to that final game, then they have an advantage over almost any other team. But I don't expect Taiwan to be in that final, so Taiwan would have the advantage. But if they're not playing Taiwan, I think against Spain or South Africa, they would have to have clear pitching advantage. And that's the main reason why I think Nicaragua is the clear-cut second team in this pool.
Oh, so you think Nicaragua is second out of the four? I think Spain, they have edge over Spain.
I think Taiwan's biggest challenge is going to be Spain in a game, just because it's Game 1. They're facing the they're facing the Spain ace, and there's going to be a lot of pressure for Taiwan to win that game. But you win that game, and then you get South Africa, you're 2-0. There's a lot less pressure in that third game, and Nicaragua will have to use some of their bullpen arms before they get to that point to try and get through Spain, especially. So I think it's just matchup based. Like I think Nicaragua is the second best team, but matchup wise, Spain has probably a better chance of winning a game. But I think Nicaragua is going to qualify.
Oh, interesting. So it'll be Taiwan and Nicaragua holding hands going into the 26th World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
What do you think about the 26th Classic? Like, we're still like so far out, and
I think honestly, we've had great World Baseball Classics for 2023. I think really like expanded the
yep,
audience.
it's a
The time,
step
but
up. Yep, for sure.
26, I think, is going to blow it out of the water because I look at there's just so much more growth in international baseball and in development for a lot of youth programs around the world that like I think about like even a team like Nicaragua when they get to the tournament, if they can get to the tournament, they have so much pitching that they can go to that they've never had before as a country. And they have a lot of it's young, but they have so much more talent available to them. Taiwan, they're going to have so much pitching, just an embarrassment of riches in pitching. And that's why, like, I think if they qualify, we all know they're going to Tokyo. Like, that's
Yeah.
not even like a,
That's my
not even-
hope, but yes, for sure. Yeah.
it's not even a question. I mean, they can, in theory, be like, oh, they could go anywhere. It's based on,
Yeah.
regional stuff and, strength, but they're going to Tokyo. And I think I might be the only one who thinks this, but I think they can beat Korea in the World Baseball Classic if they get there because Korea, their pitching is not, I would not say it's an advantage against Taiwan. So, I mean, if Taiwan gets there, I think they can be really, really tough in group play. And I would love to see one of these young guys going up against, like Yoshinobu, Yamamoto, and because I think it'd be really entertaining to watch. And so, and I
was about to say Taiwan is about as fearful of Japan right now because of how we beat them in the finals, and they're not going to be overlooking us anymore. When Shohei Ohtani basically shared the Taiwan winning the Premier 12 on Instagram, everybody on Taiwan, our version of Reddit was like, "Calm down, God! Like, take it easy on us. We're not there yet. Just keep take it easy." But
I think I think it'd just be really fun. Great atmosphere, when Shohei is involved, it's there's that's about as big a celebrity as there is in sports right now. So I think it would just be a great environment, and I think it's kind of would really establish kind of Taiwan as like an actual like force to be reckoned with internationally, because they've had to requalify a couple different times, and it would have been 3 times in a row if they not 2 times in a row. It would have been 3 times in a row if they had
2013, and then we had 9 in a row. But out of the last 4, we should have played qualifier 3 times.
Yeah. So I mean, they haven't had quite the success outside of 2013 that they would have liked, but I think it would really be a chance to kind of show that Taiwan is up there, amongst the top 10 nations and a threat to get to a quarterfinal. And so, I mean, that would be a big step. But then I think about just like so many teams in like the Americas. I mean, Canada, Panama, Colombia, if they get there, like these are all teams who are experiencing kind of like their best like rise in talent that they've had as countries. And so it's going to make the tournament really fun because there's no real weak teams. Like Czechia is probably one team that I'm like, I can't see them winning the game. I mean, it could happen, but it would be a pretty big upset. But it's like the separation between the best team and the 4th or 5th team in the pool is just not big. So, I mean, it could be, I don't see a scenario where like Japan's pool where they're just beating someone like 9-2. Like it's not going to happen anymore just because the talent level is so much closer. And like it's not like before where a couple teams they have these big time arms and then they're facing teams who just don't have that same level and they just kind of overwhelm them. Like unless there's an upset, like you're not going to see a China probably in the World Baseball Classic. And so it strengthens the tournament immensely. And it's going to be a lot of really great games. And it's just, it's
going to be very fun.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun. I'd like to see like expansion hopefully in the future, just because I think there's so many teams that are getting so much stronger that it's going to be hard to like limit it to 20
Yeah,
teams.
yeah. That's what I meant by like the nationality rules for the World Baseball Classic. As far as I'm not a fan of it, from like being a fan of Taiwan in these international tournaments, that's they've really expanded the field because you look at like I'm looking at the pools right now. Pool D is Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Dutch, and Israel, plus a qualified team. Dutch and Israel kicked everybody's butt in 2017, and the reason for that is because of the expanded nationality rules, and that's going to still come into effect in 2026. And then you obviously have the traditional powers like Dominican Republic and Venezuela. Dominican Republic, to me, they've also underperformed the history of this tournament just because I think outside of 2017 they haven't played that particularly well in this tournament either. So that group is going to be very good. Tokyo, if Taiwan goes into this group, then it will be Japan, Australia, South Korea, and Czech Republic. Czech Republic, they made a few games entertaining in the 2023 tournaments, and then obviously Australia, if they can get those minor league system players to come in and play for them, and obviously Korea and Japan, nothing. Taiwan is so familiar with them in history, just because of our history. Group B of the United States, Mexico, and Italy. Italy was I forgot if they qualified, but Italy was one of the Italy is one of the best teams in Group A in the last tournament, and Taiwan went into a slugfest with them, and then the British, and then another qualifier there. Group A is Puerto Rico, Cuba, Canada, and Panama. These are, I mean, out of the vacuum, you can't pick two teams that you just go like, oh, they're definitely going to be in.
You're
Not
just like
just
you're
looking
looking
at
at
this on
these
paper.
pools. It's very much like it's got to come down to the matchup. It's got to come down to
Yeah.
all these kind of like you're not like, oh yeah, well these two are just they're a class above everyone else. Like even in you might say Mexico and USA, Great Britain is going to put a scare into one of them, and in a significant way. They did it last time to Mexico, and that really wasn't anywhere close to the roster they're going to have next year,
Mhm.
because they got like thanks to heritage rules, they can take advantage of players from the Bahamas. Bahamas is having like a golden age of talent right now.
Mhm.
They have just like one of the best shortstop prospects in the world, and he should be on that roster. Jazz Chisholm will be on that roster. They have Kumar Rocker because through his Indian ancestry, he's going to be on the roster more than likely. So I mean, they just have so much more talent. So like, and even Italy, they just got their first Major League Baseball pitcher that they've developed in Italy. So I mean, they're having a pretty significant jump as far as domestic talent, which is something they've been wanting for a long time. So I mean, you just look at even a pool like that, you're like, yeah, you have top two teams, but they're not going to blow the other teams out. Like it's not going to be a situation where you're like, that one of them's easily going 4-0 and the other one 3-1. Like that's not going to happen. Like it's going to be close games. And in Puerto Rico, that to me most fascinating pool, because Cuba is a massive wild card.
Yes.
Nobody has a clue what's going to happen with their rosters because it's so much. It's so complicated and so much involved. But I think about Canada, they have never qualified out past the first round, which is amazing. But they haven't done it yet. I think they have an excellent shot this time around. They have so much more talent, and there's so much. I feel like one thing that like I would say I would attribute a lot to Japanese baseball is the passion for international baseball on the biggest stage, because like I feel like a lot of people who normally wouldn't be fans or weren't that into it, like seeing Japan, seeing that final at bat between Trout and Ohtani, it just gave so much more people so much more excitement around the World Baseball Classic. And it's like, this isn't like an exhibition tournament. Like this is a huge deal. And players like it's still, you see accounts still posting it every day.
Yes.
Like, I cannot tell you the last time I saw a World Series from 2023 highlight. But I see Ohtani against Trout, and all the time now. And that wasn't even the best game of the medal round. That was
Japan Mexico was
Japan
Mexico was up there. Yeah.
And like, so I mean, Japan played two absolute classics, and so it just really kind of, I feel like it inspires a lot of players to want to be a part of it because incredible atmosphere, and it's something that really sparks a lot of interest. And like I remember watching the World Baseball Classic in 2006, 2009. It really wasn't taken serious at all. Like
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was teams that were just like, oh, it's exhibition, and you're taking time away from spring training, yada yada yada. And I remember watching the qualifiers in 2013 or 2012 actually, and I swear no one had a clue they were going on. Like I'm
Yeah.
watching on MLB.com, and I remember the ones in 2016. Like I'm watching Pakistan against Brazil, and I feel like no one in America else is watching it. So I think for me, it's just great to see the interest in it grow because in Asia, it's gonna be popular just because national
Right.
teams
For
are
sure.
so important.
Yep.
But in the US, and it was just not seen as an important event. And then the US won in 2017. Adam Jones had the ridiculous catch, and that's still shown. Like it just kind of shows for me, it's like I think the WBC is more important than Major League Baseball because you're reaching more audiences. It's like national team sports they do so much for developing interest, and people become fans through that. And it's when you have those iconic moments, I think they tend to live on a lot longer than great moments in like domestic leagues.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the amount of international players in Major League Baseball, but then each franchise, its emotional connection is with a city that they're not born in. But
Yeah.
but the World Baseball Classic is the exact opposite. I'm probably a bigger Taiwanese fan than I'm a Yankees fan, but I was a Yankees fan for the longest. But I'm not, but Taiwan means more to me than being a Yankees fan. So I when you watch, especially 2013, I remember it like Yadier Molina saying, "You don't understand how big this is for us." In 2017, when Puerto Rico and the U.S. played in the finals, and so yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's with the amount of international stars in Major League Baseball and the need for some sort of a national pride among some of the countries that they're from. I think it has a huge potential. And Otani Trout at bat in the 2023 one has definitely garnered some attention from like the American fans. Before I let you go, Jeff, FaceTime, which is something that I do with my guests every single time, especially first-time guests. And it's one topic that you can rant about as long as you want. I will not chime in. I will not, I would do my best to not, interrupt your rant. It's untimed, so you can go as long as you want. But the only rule is it has to stay on one topic. It doesn't have to be about baseball. It can be about anything. So during COVID, we have people talking about masks and stuff. So it can be about anything. Well, it's up to you though. But obviously there's more sports related ones than non-sports related ones. But I did not set a limit on what kind of topic it has to be. And you did say you're very excited about it, and I was excited to hear to see that you saying that you're excited about the FaceTime. So, without further ado, Jeff, you have the floor.
All right. So, I think I'm an international baseball account, so this is kind of related to international baseball. But for me, it's something that drives me crazy. Is the WBC qualifiers are 8 teams? This is insane to me. Like there was 16 teams when there was less interest in the tournament, and then they shrink it when there's more interest in the tournament. It drives me crazy because I look at I watch the Caribbean Baseball Cup. I shared highlights. I got people from U.S. Virgin Islands who are commenting to me, and they normally never watch their national team, and they're getting behind their national team, and it was garnering interest. Curacao there, it's one of the great baseball countries, and there's like 150,000 people there in that country, and they just develop players after players after players. Like these teams need to be in these tournaments because you're growing the game of baseball in so many different countries. And if you shut them out of the biggest tournament in the world, you're not growing baseball. You're trying to put a ceiling on it. Like it would just be like if you went in like the Americas and you told Paraguay. Yeah, well, you're not that good, so we're not going to invite you. Like that would make no sense. So it's very much I want to see an actual tangible system where every national team in the world can compete in the World Baseball Classic qualifiers. Like you can have pre-qualifiers, you qualify through continental tournaments, but you have to give them chances to where they come into these tournaments knowing this is not just for a continental championship that we hope to be competitive in. It's a chance for us to take our national team to a new level, to new heights, to grow the game, inspire more people in our country to play the game. So that way we can have one day we can compete. It gives national team a chance to challenge themselves against much better talent and grow and get better. And I think it's one of those systems it's not even difficult. It's very easy to do. You organize it years in advance, you give step by step, and you're very transparent about it. That's something they're not. They're not transparent. They need transparency regarding qualifier system. And like if you are organizing a system of qualifiers and it's dedicated to each continent, you put it on YouTube like they're doing with the qualifier streamings coming up, and all of a sudden you're getting more interest. You're having a step-by-step process where people who like you look at Brazil, Pan American Games, they won a medal, won the silver medal. They were fans attending and on social media who had never seen baseball before, not once. And then they saw it and they were like, oh, this is kind of cool. So they started following the Brazilian national team. That's something that's hugely important. It's not going to happen with Major League Baseball because you're not going to go from not caring to being a diehard fan with a team who is going to be, several hundred thousands of miles away from where you live, where you have no connection yet to it. That's different with international baseball. You can grow it that way. And it's like printing money. Like if you run and you advertise streaming and you drop times where you're going to drop not projected, but official rosters, and you have a chance to kind of give exposure to these national teams. And all of a sudden, you got people in Europe who aren't that invested in baseball. All of a sudden, you have Serbia and Croatia playing in baseball, which is huge rivals. All of a sudden, people who never watch a game of baseball, they're going to tune in because they want to see their country's rival team get beaten by their nation. Brazil and Argentina, like, why are they not playing against each other in WBC qualifier? Like that would do wonders to grow the sport in those countries. Like, so that's what I want to see. 8 teams, that's to me way too few. Like they need to open it up so that every team in the world can compete. And because of the way the roster rules are, and you could have players who qualify to play for these national teams that are their grandparents or great grandparents from that country. So you can give stronger these rosters, make them stronger, and all of a sudden you're growing, you're getting more attention, and really gives a platform to international baseball that they haven't had before. And it's all of a sudden you're developing more casual fans, or more fans go from casual to diehard, and it would just be something that I think is long overdue, and something that I think would be monumental for the growth of baseball around the world.
Yeah, and as much, I obviously you have a lot of passion for not just the top end of international baseball, but also like the qualifiers, and even your wanting to expand the qualifiers for the World Baseball Classic. And yeah, I just, me personally, as a Taiwanese fan, I hope I will now have to cover a qualifier again. I think we stay in the actual tournament. I don't want to finish last in the group again. If we go to the Tokyo group and we finish last, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. But I do think that with the growth of baseball, and with how strong Taiwan is in baseball, it would only help the CPBL. It only help Taiwan if baseball continues to grow globally. And yeah, we're across the screen, but I can feel your passion with international baseball, and I really can't thank you enough for covering some of the less well-known baseball leagues around the world, And yeah, your account is a great follow. If you haven't been following already, go follow Jeff Duda on Twitter. The ad is, I believe, international INTL Baseball 24. Did I miss? Did
Yes,
I?
that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead and make sure you're covering that. And he does a great job covering all these different countries and all these different tournaments. And what really struck me about with your account was how good you were, again, by explaining how big the Premier 12 Championship is for Taiwan, and how significant that was. There are people covering international baseball on Twitter, but not a lot can explain the magnitude of that
I
particular
would say
tournament.
I do something that I don't really think any other international baseball account does, or anyone who pays attention to it, is like I will spend hours researching like a team's like international baseball history. Like I'm going back to the 40s, the 30s,
Yeah.
looking at like their accomplishments, because it's like I feel like it puts it in more in perspective when you go fast forward. Like I look at Venezuela; they have never won a championship of a global baseball tournament. It's one of the best baseball countries in the world. They've
Yes.
never won one ever. So so, and I don't even think many people in their country even know that. Like that's how
I didn't know that, to be honest. Yeah.
yeah. So that's like they're like when you think of you think of baseball, Venezuela, one of the first 5 or 6 countries,
Right.
but it's like, well, they've never won. They've
Yeah.
never won. They've won it under 23 gold, but their senior team has never won. And I think they have 3 medals ever. So it's like you go into the WBC, like if they were to make a final, even not even winning it, just making a final would be monumental for them. And
Mhm.
it's like, I just love like, I love keeping track of like past history, because I'm very much like very into, just historical results, and like I think it's very interesting to me, and I don't think most people are aware of kind of what happens.
Yeah.
They just feel like some people just assume that it started like 30 years ago, and that's just it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and it's I know like Mexico, I think in 2023, I believe the Central American and Caribbean Games is the first time they've ever won a senior international
Mhm.
tournament. So I mean, it's pretty fascinating stuff. And then I know like Taiwan is like, they've like that was a pinnacle of baseball in Taiwan.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
like beating, and I think it had to beat Japan too. Like that, I think made it more special, because you had won, but you had beaten Venezuela in the final. Like it would have been
Mhm.
great, celebrated, but it wasn't like the dominant team in the region. It
Sure.
wasn't like the reigning world champion, like the team who like. I think Taiwan would have want. They want to be Japan. They want to be that team in Asia who's dominating the region and has had dominated for decades. Like they want to be that team. So beating them at home
Yeah.
and doing
In
it,
Tokyo.
yeah, and I think it was even better that one of your young future star pitchers was on the mound for that game. Like it was a glimpse into the future while also, winning in the present. And I think that to me it was a special moment. And then, I think it was like in doing it on a roster that nobody thought was going to do anything significant.
Right.
Like it was just like, okay, who are these guys? So coming into the tournament, I was like, I can't see that. I thought they would finish last. Like
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is like when they beat Korea. I was like, they've been upset, but not crazy upset. I wasn't super high on Korea coming into the tournament,
Mhm.
but then they kept winning and winning
Yeah.
and winning, and I was like, okay, all right, these dudes are good. And then they went to the super round, and then when they spanked the U.S.,
Yeah.
I didn't expect. I thought it'd be a close game. Either team could win, but I didn't expect it to be like a blowout. It really wasn't even competitive.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And then I'll admit, I was kind of rooting for Taiwan a little in the final.
Mhm.
I was like,
Yeah.
this would be
The
cool.
underdog, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, this would be cool. And then it was and then, but as soon as that 3-run homer
Mhm.
hit the seats, I was like, oh, they're gonna win. Like this is over.
Yeah.
Like it kind of
Yeah.
felt like it was over. And then it was
To me, to me, the most attractive story of the Taiwan Japan finals was, you look at Liu Yunmin, the Diamondback pitcher, obviously like the future star, right? But you look at who bridged between him and the closers, or like your winning bullpen pitchers. It was Choyaku, the Zhang Yi, the guy who started his professional career in Japan as a hitter, then changed to a pitcher. He pitched out in the 2019, like he was outstanding in the 2019 Premier 12, but after that, his career looked like he was on a downtrend. Got basically let go of Japan, and then he goes to the CPBL, and then he was working on an injury for a lot of the 2023-2024 seasons, and but then he's the one that dominates Team Japan in the championship. He didn't pitch well. He dominated the 3 innings that he pitched, and then the 8th inning was Chen Guanyu, which is the lefty. He also was developed in Japan, went back to Taiwan when he was in age 30. So you're looking at all these comeback stories of how they kind of, in a very bad way of putting it, got eliminated in the Japanese league. They go to Taiwan, and then they come back and they beat the best of the Japanese league players. That to me, that was an incredible story. And Zhang Yi, man, like for some reason he just pitches terrific in the Premier 12. He can, like, he is, for some reason he has this magic in the Premier W that he just dominates. And
Was he on the? I can't remember. Was he on the WBC team?
no, he was hurt. He was he got hurt before the tournament, and that was a huge loss for us. But at the same time, I wasn't expecting the same level of performance from if he were in the World Baseball Classic, because he pitched against Korea in the Premier 12 2019, and he pitched like 6 innings of like 1 run ball or something like that. But he took like 120 pitches. So I was thinking, like, there's no way he's going to duplicate that, because the pitch limit in the WBC, well, he wasn't going to do the same. But Premier 12 is just his tournament. He basically owns that thing. We're just renting it or watching it. So it's really those 2 stories was very fascinating to me.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things interesting about the last WBC is like Taiwan's pitching was what let them down. Like that was the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
for me, it's a term. I think most people expected like pitching to be pretty decent, like, and that the offense would have bigger issues. But like they had a couple really. I think the only game, Cuba was the only game that they didn't really do much offensively. So that was kind of like when Panama like kind of smoked him the first game. I was like, what's going on here? I was hanging out of the pool. Like I thought, like second team. Like I didn't think that they were going to lose to Panama.
That Panama game kind of brought back all the PTSDs of like the Israel and the Dutch and the Japan in 2013 and the Japan in 2006 and the Korea. Yeah, that Panama game, I legit shed a tear when we beat the Dutch, because I was like, oh my god, we actually are allowed to win a game in this tournament. That's crazy. I
think that group though is also one of the reasons why I love international baseball, because because the culture is so different than the U.S.
Yes.
Like, even they're down like 6-7 runs to Cuba, the fans are still cheering. They're still super into it. And if that's the United States, there's no way they're into it. Fans are just like
probably leaving by like the 5th inning. Yeah.
Or like, and then obviously the game against Italy, I think that got the most attention, just because Yu Chang hit that. For me, it was a little bigger than the Grand Slam, just because I felt like their tournament was kind of almost on life support in that game. Like they needed something. And when he hit the 2-run homer, then it was like the crowd is just going nuts. And I know like Fox Sports was highlighting their fans, but I was like, how do you not want to like attend a game in this atmosphere? Like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think it's like, I remember when the Mets were talking about having a cheerleading squad and fans were like ridiculing them for it. I was just like, oh no, the young kids might actually like being at the game. So
the Rangers have a cheerleading squad. I think they borrow. I don't know if they borrow from the Cowboys, right? I don't. It's just not a thing. It's not a thing there. Which is, again, everybody has a different culture. It takes a lot to get used to the Taiwanese culture, because it's so loud. Like there's no stoppage, so it's so loud. But yeah, like I said, that baseball is the same. It's the same game, but it can be played in so many different ways. Well, that's it from me, then, Jeff. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I've had a tremendous time. I said this is supposed to be about 20 to 30 minutes, but it's an hour and 5 minutes. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you your patience.
No worries.
And thank you so much for coming on.
All right, appreciate it. It was good.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.